Hey everyone, here's the new video you've all been desperately waiting for. Or at least, that's the lie I tell myself to feel important. Ha! Today's lovely topic, nuclear revenge. So, let's get into it. Enjoy the video. Abusive spouse attempts to commit bigamy after putting me through hell. Revenge commences. I'm the same person who wrote about destroying my darling sibling, hereto known as DS, X's world, after he mentally, emotionally abused them, was chronically unfaithful, cheated while they were across the world, and then publicly dumped them on Facebook. This is about the spouse that I married on that fateful visit by DS. Now, when I met Cuntface, hereto known as CF, he was ideal. He was what I thought I needed. I believed I loved him and that the fairy tale was real. We met by random chance, both many hours from our homes, me whilst running away from a situation at home, he while a planned trip abroad. I ended up in Europe within a month and we married about 10 months later. All good, right? Well, it was. Until I started racking up multiple university degrees with honors, and he began to realize that not only was I significantly younger, about 17 years, thinner, a big issue in his mind, not in his mind at all, and, according to him, better looking, I was now significantly better educated. He was always a bit insecure, but the degrees seemed to really push him over the edge. While I was waiting for my spousal visa, things were falling apart. We both kind of gave up but decided to resolve to save our relationship. I moved and found that nothing he had promised to prepare had happened. The home situation was a mess. We were living with his quite elderly widower father, and he was meant to be taking care of him and the household. None of this was happening. Instead, both CF and his disgusting sister, now known as Ugly Fuck or UF, were essentially living as leeches off of their 80-something father. I tried to make things work, but within a week and a half of me landing, he threw an iPad at my head and punched the wall next to my head while screaming that he could have me deported at will. Okay, well fine. I made a promise. I kept trying. It got worse. I took months of emotional abuse, insults, threats, cursing, and everything else short of him actually laying hands on me. 6 months later, he randomly disappeared for 2 weeks to visit Seattle without mentioning it to me. I left. I started over with nothing much to my name but a job and a bit of money thousands of kilometers from anyone I knew. He expected me to run home. I didn't falter. I blossomed. About a year later, I met my present partner, who has been the truest and most loyal partner I could have wished for. Truly, if I had to do it all again, I would, if I knew my partner would be on the other side. Now for my revenge. I happened to find out that he had a new girlfriend that seemed very serious and noticed she had mentioned wedding planning on social media. You have to keep tabs on your abusers, especially when your safety is at risk. Now, she's welcome to him. The only issue is, due to draconian divorce laws in my current country, we were not divorced yet. He planned on marrying her in another country. When we met, he told me he had never been married. I later found out he was indeed divorced. I was willing to bet he fed her the same exact lie. So, I sent her a message. My suspicions were confirmed. He told her he had never been married. I was wife number 2. She didn't want to believe it until I sent her a photo of our marriage license as well as a few wedding photos. I did feel really badly about doing that to her because I could tell how hurt she was, but I knew it was better for her to know the truth than to inadvertently marry him the next month in Seattle as they had planned. She had children. She had a violent ex-husband. She and I actually ended the conversation on a positive note, with her thanking me and me apologizing and explaining why I felt I had to tell her. And then the fallout. My phone started blowing the fuck up. Unknown number. In the evening. Wonder who that might be. I was out enjoying a lovely dinner with my partner and answered a call on speaker. In came the usual threats to my person and security, blah, blah, blah. I could only laugh. He didn't know where I was, nor was he getting past my partner. I could finally relax knowing I was safe after months of night terrors. And then, I have lost the love of my life because of you. She has left me and thrown all of my things out of her home. People, I lost it. I could not stop laughing. It was poetic. He sent a similar email to my mother, laced with blatant lies about me, as if she didn't know the play-by-play as it was happening, and as if she'd believe a word he had to say anyway. After I got done laughing, I hung up on him and had my number changed. Then, I remembered his sister, UF, was living at the same home. UF has a disabled daughter that lives 200 kilometers away that she claims benefits for, including an apartment and money allowances. She then sublets the handicap-accessible apartment to her boyfriend illegally whilst leeching off of her father. She's also a thief, caught on hidden camera literally taking notes out of CF's wallet. CF and UF absolutely despise each other and are only both living there in hopes of driving the other out in order to get the house as inheritance. Now, if UF got reported to the council for fraud and they did minimal investigation, they'd see she was falsely claiming benefits for an adult daughter who lived far away and had her own benefits, deserved, from another council. She would lose her apartment and possibly face jail time. If she lost her apartment, it was certain she would never leave the father's home. It was CF's worst nightmare. So, I made it happen. Besides, how dare UF claim money she isn't entitled to simply due to her being too lazy to work? She was a neglectful mother when she was actually caring for her kid, leaving her kid in a wheelchair with a jam sandwich and running to the pub the moment benefit money came in. Now she was lying and keeping a rare, accessible apartment from someone who truly needs it. That more than justified it, but the thought of both of them being stuck in the same house, fighting all day and night, both too lazy to leave and too stubborn to give up the inheritance they fantasize about, that's a lovely thought to me. What makes it better? Knowing he cried his eyes out over his lost fiancée in that very same house, soaking in his miserable existence. Sorry it was long. TLDR, husband turned into controlling, abusive, insecure asshole. Endured 6 months of abuse before escape. Found out he was planning to marry again before we were divorced by marrying in a different country, so told his fiancé the truth and got him dumped. Reported his hated sister to council for benefits fraud, so they are both stuck living together in same household, waiting on father to die for inheritance. Edit. Fixed it to clarify who DS is. Thanks for pointing out the oversight. The story when me and my tricked an internet creep into snorting baking soda. This is my first post in this group. I really hope you agree that this is pro-revenge material and that you will enjoy it. It's a long ride, but I hope you'll find it worth the read. And apologies in advance for my grammar, as English is not my primary language. First off, the backstory. This took place in the early days of the interwebs, around the autumn of 1999, when HTML-coded chats became very popular. For you youngins, these spaces would be considered a pinnacle of free online speech today, as they were 100% unmoderated and they didn't log any personal data or that you registered an account. It was extremely basic to use, as you just had to write what your session screen name was, and that was it. So anyone who wanted to be a creep, abusive, or toxic could do this without any real-life consequence, which led to a lot of unwanted contacts. Their MO was basically to use the whisper function, aka old school DM, where you still wrote in the group chat, but only the recipient could see it. Especially girls and young women were targeted, and although these chats didn't support any images, it was pretty common to exchange email addresses to keep in touch. So lo and behold, the low pixel dick pic was received. This meant that we users needed to figure out ways to self-moderate the chats. The most common way to protect ourselves was to create online communities on a separate website, often using the name of the particular chat room where you hanged out. Our was named The Attic, for example. As this was before the use of registration, a membership would be granted if you were active and endorsed by another member. We had member lists containing our nicknames, a bulletin where we warned about known creeps, lists on how to behave, early netiquette, and other ways to support each other. An example on how we could make a creep leave the chat was to coordinate in the chat and send hundreds of whisper messages using Control+V, flooding their screen with wall of repetitive text that only they could see. 95% of the creeps gave up as their connection would suffer. Our attic was known as the safest place among these chat rooms. Some creeps, though, were a bit more slippery and still managed to trick victims to share personal info. So it was a constant battle to come up with new, different, and often very creative and funny ways to combat these creeps. Now let me present the actors in the story. I met 20, my then girlfriend, first 21, through a physical meetup that was organized by this specific community. We would meet up once or twice per year, traveling from all over the country, just to meet up and then hang around for a weekend, partying or doing fun stuff at amusement parks or other places. My girlfriend was one of the first members in this community and was a well-known user in the chat for being really tough and creative when dealing with creeps. A standing joke was that she was more evil than the devil. Now for the pro-revenge part. The creep in question, let's call him Farmer Bob, was one of the creeps who was a bit slippery. He managed to become a member without any of us suspecting a thing. His creepiness was very low-key, and only after some of the younger members started to report getting emails and unwanted messages, me and the girlfriend decided to act. We started out by her pretending to be a naive and new user, and we managed to get him interested. After some back and forth, we managed to get some basic info about him and even some personal info. For example, we learned that he was living in the rural areas of the country, and he claimed to be wealthy as he owned a cattle farm, hence Farmer Bob. We soon realized that he was extremely stupid, seeming to be lacking in both social skills and basic education. He bragged about always wearing wooden shoes and how the females loved to be fucked by him while wearing them. After some more back and forth, my girlfriend got bored and decided to just fuck it, let's just go all in. So my girlfriend pretended to be interested in maybe hooking up, but only if he could offer some cocaine, as it always made her super horny. To our surprise, he took the bait, and that he couldn't afford it, despite bragging about being a wealthy cattle farmer just an hour earlier. He also slipped by telling her that his parents would be out of town the coming weekend. Dude literally forgot that he had claimed to be the owner of the bloody farm. Anyway, GF felt that she wanted to just exaggerate the crap out of him and wrote something like, "But Farmer Bob, didn't you know that if you mix 3 parts baking soda with 1 part vanilla sugar, then you would get a rush equal to a cocaine rush but with a nice aftertaste? It's also way cheaper." We thought this was so over the top that the game would be up and that he would finally realize that GF was just trolling by now. Instead, he told us that he had forgotten about that DIY cocaine trick and thanked GF for reminding him about it. GF convinced him that he had to be sure to make a batch before she booked a train ticket, and he had to make sure it was of good quality. He promised her that he would make a batch right away and try it out later that evening, and we logged out. Fast forward a couple of days, believing him to have realized that GF had been trolling him, we got an email written in all caps. It was something like, "You made my nose bleed, you MF bitch. I had to visit a clinic because of you," etc. He was so furious and accused her of tricking him. No shit, Sherlock. But wait, my fellow Redditors, this wasn't even the best part. We not only managed to somehow convince him that he must have gotten the mix wrong, we made an outlandish claim that she used this DIY nose candy all the time in her side gig, which was to produce and star in German amateur spanking pornos that she sold to tourists from all over Europe. To prove this, we recorded an extremely stupid and blatantly obvious fake trailer for our big hit, Spankin' Mein Scheisse. My girlfriend's younger brother asked for him and his friend to star in it. So the scene is her bed, her brother, pretending to be random dude, sitting there with his friend laying on his stomach over his lap, both fully dressed, and pretending to be my girlfriend, as he had long curly hair. Using a wooden spatula, he simulated spanking him while I stood behind the camera and clapping wet hands to create a sloppy spanking. To top it off, me and girlfriend shouted German-sounding nonsense, and they mimed their mouths. The quality of the video was horrendous, but the low resolution and frame rate actually created a believable trailer. It was still extremely silly and over the top, and should have been apparently fake to everyone. Not to Farmer Bob, though. He was totally convinced this was the genuine thing and begged us to sell him some films. We agreed to do so, but only if he tried the homemade cocaine again. We never heard from him again after that. I'm guessing he finally realized it was all fake. He might have kept creeping in the chat room, but using another name. We never got another report with his email, though. And yes, this is a true story. The trailer was unfortunately on an external hard drive that broke 7 years ago. I hope to be able to extract it someday, but until then, you have my word of honor that this is a true story. I used theatrics to spite my bully. He was pretty dramatic about the whole thing. TLDR at the bottom. Prelude. When I was a young man of just 18, I got a job in the Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. It was the early 2000s, and this paid $20 per hour, with no experience or education required. Min wage was sub $6. It was called well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed pressure tank and flare stack to new oil and gas wells, then flow them, gather data for the oil barons. It's hard work setting up and tearing down, but the rest is recording gauges and computer work. Not bad for a first job, except for fucking Gary. You work 2-man 12-hour or 4-man 24-hour crews. 1 laborer and 1 supervisor a shift. I was paired with a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy to lift on my own, like 250-pound pipes. He spent his days in the trailer for the most part anyway, watching DVDs, napping, and hourly typing a bit of data in to a PC. He also liked picking on me with jokes, read insults. I'm not a small man, about 6 feet 1 inch in heels. He was noticeably smaller, yet while not physically intimidated, back then I lacked confidence and have a baby face. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I had never used a power drill, he asked me, "Didn't your dad teach you anything?" I made the error of telling him my dad was only in my life a handful of years. The next time I made a mistake, he quipped, "No wonder my dad walked out on me." I did call him out on that. Like every other asshole alive, he'd tell me I couldn't take a joke. We always worked far out of town in the country. I often had to eat dinner with him in small town restaurants, mostly bars if we could help it. He drank a lot, could actually be personable when not at work, and he was at least too deep. He didn't stop and drank every night. It quickly became the case that I drove us to work in his truck. He made $1 or $1.10 per kilometer, and we could drive 100 to 350 kilometers per day, every day for weeks. 100 miles equals 160 kilometers, FYI. I got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most mornings, didn't want to drive, and told me he was boss. He slept like a gin-bloated corpse until we got to work. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of demeaning treatment and verbal abuse. I don't react much. It's still true everyone has their breaking point. I was very used to bullying by then, long story. I just get silent. I also needed the job. I don't anything. Until I do, and I don't do nothing forever. Part 1. The Power of Love. The first step in my quest for vengeance was remembering that it's impossible to defeat evil with the power of love. Part 2. The Power of Terror. One night, while we were out of town on a job, during dinner, I mentioned to Gary it's pretty lame he sleeps most of the time, while I drive his truck and he gets paid. Maybe he ought to kick a few bucks my way for the effort. He didn't like my suggestion he be generous. The last hinge must have crumbled because he came unglued. More verbal abuse, and I was young. It actually reduced me to angry tears. When he threatened my job, it was a bad feeling. So I resolved to at least get away from him. I'd been taking notes because I wanted a different crew anyway. My breaking point was achieved. This is usually when my instinct for self-preservation diminishes and impulsive thoughts have fewer safeguards. I wanted to go home. Not revenge, but serendipity delivered the next morning. Gary was once again in his travel coma, and I drove us to work. About 30 kilometers from side of the highway on a pullout was a semi-truck. Luck would also have it was running and trucker was outside his rig. I quickly formulated a plan. Gary always needed to be woken with intent, so he didn't stir when I stopped, got out, and asked the friendly driver for a favor. Trucker man agreed to my terms, got back in his semi to await the signal. Gary, blissfully sleeping off the last of his nightly whiskey, also failed to notice when I maneuvered his truck. Parking it, we were nearly bumper to bumper facing the big, beautiful Peterbilt. I lit the beacon. The truckers of Rohan answered with their own headlights. Like the horn of Helm Hammerhand sounding in the deep, the trucker hit his air horn with amazing commitment to instilling fear. I did my part by honking Gary's truck gleefully in respite and screaming my ass off. I cried bloody murder at blast level and yelled, "Fuck, we're gonna die!" Striking like a battalion of bombers singing a chorus of fire, the glorious cacophony lasted less than a minute. When it hit him, Gary dented the ceiling. Good thing he's thick as cement, or that might have hurt. He rocketed up with such force because the amount of shit he rapidly expelled into his pants kept him in debt to his own bowels until retirement. The wonderful sound of his anguished howls segued quickly into apoplexy and rage. While coming to terms with what I had done, he couldn't correctly choke out his death threats. I reversed, peeled off before he decided to get out to make good, and gave the trucker a wave. I got about 10 meters down the road when Gary felt the need to tell me he had dangerously high blood pressure, and I could have killed him with a stroke. About 4 years later, I went to paramedic school, so yes, in hindsight, I agree with his assessment. Sucks for him, at 18, I had legitimately no idea what a stroke was. What would I even do? Probably ignore him like they did with Stalin. I'd think he was just extra hungover, or being lazier than usual by pretending half his body was paralyzed. Dead. I started laughing and told him he should probably calm down then. I said, "Can't you take a joke?" He kept making incomplete threats, and I just couldn't stop laughing, making it even funnier when he wouldn't shut up. Don't feed it, Gary. I love ugly laughing at angry people. I was a hyena. He was fighting the urge to kill me and the desire to not stroke out simultaneously. The struggle was real. It took about 20 minutes more to get to site. That dance continued the whole time. I even asked him if that was his normal shade of red. Arriving, he ordered me to get out, said I was fired, then stomped off to go call the company owner. Whatever. I had intermittent chuckles and smoked cigarettes while savoring my Pyrrhic victory for the 4 hours it took the company owner to come pick me up. It was a medium-sized business, about 100 employees. He was the GM as well. I got some details. Gary wanted to involve the cops for attempted murder. Boss dissuaded him. Gary told one hell of a tale that left me looking like Satan. So, I told him all about the necessity of Gary's punishment on the way back to the city. He had a good chuckle about it. He was actually a decent guy. I worked for him until I went back to school. I got moved to a different crew where I could be the lone sociopath. That's about it. I did get some street cred with the rest of the boys at the company. Block my funds because of your mistake? Have your bank's social media ruined? For some reason, God knows why, I thought I'd trust a very small and local credit union with some of my money. When recently my card didn't work on the ATM, I asked for help inside the branch, and a clerk gave me a code to use that would deduct cash directly from my account. This is a feature the bank has. I wasn't having special treatment. Fast forward a few days, it seems the bank system flagged my account for review because of some accounting error being late to deduct my balance. I didn't go on overdraft or anything. It was just a minor mistake from their side. And still, for over a month, all my funds were locked, and whenever I'd call my bank's support, I was given snarky responses, sometimes even hinting that they didn't like my foreign-sounding last name. When I spoke to my family back home to vent about this situation, a younger cousin came up with an idea. Use some Russian service that pays people a few Russian rubles. 1 ruble is approximately 1 USD cent for reference. Each time to post whatever you ask them on social media. This service worked like magic. The website even had the option to choose between American-looking profiles and other locales. After the most well-spent $3 of my life and some AI prompts later, the credit union's social media were flooded with hundreds of complaints. I'm sure this got to the right ears because on the same day, the bank's call center manager personally called me to say they understand my frustration, and even if I don't want my account anymore, the bank is ready to initialize a transfer of my full balance, plus $50 compensation to any other bank of my choosing. Problem solved. They probably also realized there was no way to link this activity to me, and hence hinted at ending things on a positive note. Too bad I can't tell the Russian bots to remove their posts. That will be someone else's problem now. Classmate got pranked by fake letter after screwing us over. Old story. This is a very old revenge from when I was a teenager in the 90s. There were only a few PC gamers around at the time, and without internet, it was hard to get hold of new games. Me and a friend bought games from abroad via airmail because local stores didn't sell many, but these weren't cheap. We'd trade them with each other and would copy the copy protection, which was often included, so this made it semi-affordable for us. A new kid joined our class, however, and his uncle had tons and tons of games we didn't have. We offered to trade games with him and gave him our original copies for him to copy, and in return we got corrupted floppies, yes, this was the 90s, missing copy protection, etc. And after a few months of this, we received not a single working game, while he had received all of our games. The Settlers, Doom 2, Monkey Island games, etc. And some he returned in less than nice condition. We had enough, and we wanted to get revenge, but we didn't know how. Now, the 90s were known for the many AIDS campaigns after Freddie Mercury died of AIDS in 1991. I was a huge fan of Queen, and this new friend would often mock me for liking a gay singer. He came from a very conservative family, and his mother was quite Catholic. And this is what gave us an idea when we had to attend an AIDS event organized by a certain foundation with our class. At the end, we were given flyers about AIDS, homosexuality, etc., and free condoms with the logo of the AIDS Foundation were up for grabs. We each grabbed a few for reasons you'll soon reach below. Me and my friend were one of the very few with a computer and inkjet printer at home, so we got this idea to screw him over. We created a fake letter addressed to our friend, pretending we were the AIDS Foundation, copying the logo and everything to make it look as authentic as possible. It went something like this. Dear first name, thank you for your... We understand it's difficult being open about being homosexual, and you have many questions after the event you attended with your class. Please find enclosed a flyer which should answer many of your questions, as well as some condoms. Please practice safe sex at all times. We enclosed all the flyers we had gotten at the event, as well as the condoms, and mailed it to Mr. Last Name to guarantee his father would open the letter first. We had no idea the shitstorm this would create. We knew him being homophobic this would be great revenge, but apparently his mother had been in tears, screaming, his father angry, and he was grounded for weeks with his parents convinced he was gay. In the end, he figured we had something to do with it because we had been carefully fishing to see if our prank had succeeded. But at first, he thought the letter was authentic, and we had contacted the foundation in his name. When we finally confessed we had faked it all, we had a nice trip to the principal to explain why we had done this, with his parents present. It's still the best revenge I ever took in my life, even though it was 30 years ago. Hurt my friend? Good luck with your education. I recognize this is long. Feel free to skip if you don't have the time or patience. Also, if this is more petty than pro, I can move it. Back in the before times, when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled at my local junior college. A little into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could both save on rent. I will call my girlfriend Lucy for the purposes of this post. One night, Lucy says she invited a friend from one of her classes for a game night. Sounded good to me. We invited a couple of other friends, and it was a really fun night. Surprisingly, it turned out her friend, Sarah, was someone I knew from high school. We weren't close friends, but we knew each other and got along fine. After that night, Sarah was invited over pretty frequently for dinner, game nights, or to watch a movie. She even brought her boyfriend over a couple of times. I'll call him Jay. But he never quite fit in. He would be quiet and/or standoffish, wouldn't engage much, and just seemed like he never wanted to be there. It was clear no one really felt comfortable having him there, but we invited him to be polite to Sarah. Fortunately, he only came over 2 or 3 times and found an excuse to refuse every other time. A month or two after this all started, Sarah called my GF crying and asked if she could come over. Of course, we said yes. The story that was relayed was Jay was getting very upset with Sarah for coming over to our place so frequently and accused her of cheating on him. She never clarified if he thought she was cheating with me, Lucy, or both, but any option was ridiculous and never happened. But he confronted her and started verbally assaulting her, calling her all kinds of nasty names. At one point, she tried to walk past him to leave, and he shoved her back. This caused her to trip over a coffee table, fall, and get a huge bruise on her butt and lower back. Lucy told me about the bruise as Sarah had shown her. I didn't see it for myself. Sarah swore up and down that he had never physically assaulted her before, and she believed it was just an accident. But I was pissed. I wanted revenge. You don't mess with my friends, and you don't assault women. I wanted to beat the crap out of him. But while I'm a very big guy, I've never been in a fight and am not a violent person. But a revenge plan formed in my mind. At the time, I was working in the administration building of the school as a student employee. As part of my job, I could access anyone's student records, their fees, and their class schedule. The date was fast approaching that was the last possible day to drop or add classes without penalty or specific permission, so I looked Jay up in the system, got his student ID number and the other information that I needed, and put my plan into motion. On the last day to change schedules, I used the dedicated enrollment phones in the administration building. Internet class scheduling wasn't a thing that was set up yet, and canceled all of his classes. Not only that, but I went through and added every class I could find that had a course fee. If you owed a debt at the school, you couldn't get copies or your transcripts or anything else. Something that I didn't mention was that Jay was a foreign student and couldn't stay in the country if he wasn't enrolled with a certain number of units. I wish I could give more info about the fallout, but as I didn't want to get this traced back to me, I didn't tell anyone, nor did I pull up his records again for quite a while. I did get a little payoff, though. Sarah was really worried about seeing him again. She had broken up with him the night after he pushed her, as they had an English class together on Tuesdays. She said that on Tuesday he was there, but there was also someone new standing in the class. He was standing because there weren't enough seats. The teacher, seeing that there were more people than should be held roll, and guess who wasn't on it? You're right, it was Jay. Apparently, after I dropped all his classes, someone on the waitlist got in. Jay tried to argue with the teacher, but as Teach had the official class roster and Jay wasn't on it, there was nothing he could do. Sarah said she never saw Jay in that class again. I don't know much more about what happened. Lucy and I eventually broke up, so I didn't see Sarah very often after that. After a while, I did look up Jay's class schedule, and all of the classes with course fees were gone, but he didn't have any other classes on the books either. I wanted to assume he was kicked out of school, but I didn't try to confirm it. Either way, Sarah didn't have to have a class with him, and while he probably deserved more, he was definitely inconvenienced and possibly kicked out of school. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh, but then I remember that he deserved it. Mess with me, but not my friends. Alright, that's going to do it for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and make sure to subscribe. It honestly means a lot to me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.